Welcome to the 2020 Philadelphia Film Festival. My name is Michael Lerman. I'm the artistic director here, and I'm very, very honored to have with us the director of 9 to 5, Julia Reichert, and the subjects, Ellen Cassedy and Mary Jung. Thank you guys so much for being here. How are you holding up in this time of COVID? How are you all faring?
Speaking for me, I'm in Ohio right now.
Yeah.
But, I don't know if you know this, Michael, but Philadelphia was our big city growing up. I'm from exit 7 of the Jersey Turnpike, Bordentown. Okay, and I think I have family tuning in from around there and friends in Philadelphia. So Philadelphia is where we saw the Mummers Parade and we saw Santa going up the, do either of you, Ellen or Mary, have Philadelphia connections?
Yeah, I lived there from 1979 through 1993. My kids were born there.
Wow.
So I love Philadelphia.
Me too, yeah. Great city. That was our big city. That was it. The Automat, Chinese restaurants.
The last time I was there was 4 years ago for the DNC.
Huh.
Wow. I'm very excited to welcome you guys back, at least digitally. I wanted to start, Julia, with you and just kind of talk about, this is a different, you've made some oral history films, as one might say, and it's different format from a lot of the other things you might be known for. And I was wondering why you chose this one and why you chose to return to that form at this moment in time for yourself and your career.
Well, I think you're referring to American Factory as a cinema verite film, and a lot of people saw that. The Last Truck is more or less a cinema verite film. A Lion in the House is a cinema verite film. But Union Maids and Seeing Red are made in a style I also really love, which is the oral history. And, we started this film, you guys, well, Ellen will certainly remember, years before we started American Factory. So it wasn't like American Factory was even on the horizon at all. Mm-hmm. And, you choose, as a filmmaker, you choose your tools depending upon what the work is. And this is all about the past. It's all about the 70s, 80s, 90s. The people are still around. There are photographs. You can find it. It's hard to find, but you can find archival footage. We found quite a bit of footage with Mary in it as a young woman in her early 20s. It was the right way to go. American Factory was very much like it was happening right in front of us at our hometown of Dayton, Ohio, right? This factory gets opened with Chinese, that had closed with Chinese owners. We got to get over there. We got to start shooting. And you don't have any idea what the story is ahead of time. I think with 9 to 5, there were no books, right, you guys? Ellen's writing one right now.
I'm writing a book. There will soon be a book.
But there were no books. There were not really articles. There was nothing. We had to kind of start from scratch about 9 years ago now that we started. And I love both formats. They're both adventures. They both involve really deep searching and thinking. Mm-hmm. So they're just different depending on, what you're doing. And why you're doing it. So
I wanted to ask Ellen a little bit about the early newsletters and about kind of some of the things that are laid out very clearly in the film, especially the simple steps for organizing, and what lessons you feel like could be taken from this movement and taken into other movements today, given the climate of everything that's happened this summer.
Well, let's think. The newsletters, I think Karen says in the film that we just use the newsletters to open a door and to say, come in, sit down with us, tell us what's on your mind. And we had to let go a lot of assumptions. For example, we thought maybe young people were going to be the only ones interested. That wasn't true. We thought the women who were very well dressed, we thought for some reason they wouldn't be interested. In fact, they were the most interested. We thought people who identified as feminists would be the only people interested, and that wasn't true at all. So it was a little bit, the lesson I take from it is follow your nose, trust your instincts, and let go of some of those assumptions of what it's supposed to be like and who you think is going to be interested in joining. Because we built a really powerful movement made up of people who had never been involved before. I started, Julia made reference to this book that I'm writing about 9 to 5, and I started writing it right after the Women's March of 2017, because I saw these women out there in the streets who had never been to a demonstration before, but they just had to be there. And that's what 9 to 5 was like.
And you know, one, just to answer that a little bit too, you know, it takes a long time to change the world. You know, there may be moments of great energy and people in the streets and all that, which we're having a moment like that now. You know, we had Occupy how many years ago when the women's movement was around, when you guys got involved, there was a huge amount of interest. But in order to keep it going, and I think you see this in the film, in order to actually make change, it doesn't happen overnight. You have to form organizations, you have to have structure, you have to have tactics and strategies that fit the times. And if there's anything I hope young ones, young organizers, young people today take out of it, it's that, like, keep at it, form structure, form organizations, and see it for the long haul. And don't feel like these women were fighting against sexual harassment in the 70s, right? And you know, it's gotten better. They were fighting for equal pay in the 70s.
Right.
So they just give up when it didn't happen right away. Right, Ellen? And right, Mary? You had to be in it. I think you even say that in the film, Mary. Every drop of water. And
you know, the quote was, I was just thinking that while you were saying that. It was like quote Mary says. Sorry, I didn't mean to, Mary, if you wanted to expand on that.
Well,
yeah.
well, change is just takes so long. I mean, I remember my very first activism was in 1972 during the George McGovern campaign. And the reason why I volunteered on it was that it was what I thought was one of the first democratic platforms that had universal health care on it. And the other big platform was ending the Vietnam War, which ended, you know, a few years after. But it took 40 years for universal health care, you know, named Obamacare, to pass. And even then, after it passed, it's been a fight every single session in Congress. And, you know, now with this new Supreme Court, God knows what's going to happen and how healthcare is going to be affected for millions of people.
Right.
And so the fight goes on.
We, you know, on that note, we have a question from the audience. It's, what do you think it will take to rebuild a strong labor movement?
People really have to learn how to talk to each other. You know, I don't know if San Francisco is like the rest of the world, but what we have going on here in San Francisco is very similar to what's going on in Washington, where one side will not talk to the other. And people have really got to learn how to communicate. And so if we really want to work together, so in San Francisco, we have blue fighting people who are more blue or less blue. And what we really need to do is join together and fight what's going on in Washington. Yeah. And if we could just learn how to do that, go back to the civility that we had decades ago, that would be a good thing.
I'm going to throw in, I think a lot about this question, you know, because of American Factory and The Last Truck and all that.
Yeah, I was going to say a lot of your films have to do with labor, about working class in a lot of ways.
Yeah, well, I'm a working class kid myself. That's, you know, one reason I'm wanted to put images like people like me on the screen. Yeah. But for the labor movement, I think grassroots organizing, like organize the unorganized, number one. Don't compete with each other. Like unions competing with unions, to me, is insane. I don't know what you guys think. You know, allow the young ones to start take leadership. Some of these gray-haired people who have been at it for 40 have got to step out of the way. I don't know what you guys, Mary was the head of the Democratic Party in San Francisco, and I'm sure you dealt with unions. I don't know. Well, it is different in San Francisco. But those are some advice pieces I have to answer that question.
Ellen, did you want to add to that at all? Did you?
At 9 to 5, we had these 3 principles. What's going on is unfair. There are 2 sides. The boss is wrong. And number 3, women need to join together to make progress, to make change. And then I think we really pushed to get into the labor movement, to form a woman-led union that was sort of drawing on the kind of organizing tactics that had worked so well for us at 9 to 5. You know, we were able to, as an ad hoc organization, to do quite a bit, but what we couldn't do was guarantee the permanent contract and force the boss to sit down and talk to the employees and sign a contract. For that, we needed a union, and we were fortunate to be able to press the Service Employees International Union to let us in. And we made a lot of change in that union, in women's lives, and served as a model for organizing that has taken place in other unions around the country.
Mary, we talked a little bit before the Q&A about your mom, but I had to ask you because I was very moved by that story at the end of the movie. I had to ask if you would expand a little bit about kind of the way your mom sees the movement now in retrospect, past just this piece where she's keeping clippings. And have you talked about that?
So, my mother saw one of the middle drafts of the movie, and one of the things that she had said, and this just shows growth, right? And experience, is that the one thing that she wished that she would have done differently when she was raising us, that she would have encouraged all of us to go to college, all of us to become what she termed professionals. What she encouraged the girls in the family to do was to get married, have children. If you had to, go get a nice secretarial job, something that was very, very respectable. And, looking back now and seeing the different things that I've done, I think she's quite proud of it. And I don't think that at the time when everything was going on, she really understood although there was this thing where I was surprised years ago when I found out that she had all my newspaper clippings. And, my mother doesn't read English. She's very well spoken, reads well, writes well in Chinese. Her calligraphy is beautiful, but she doesn't know, but she doesn't have any English skills. So the fact that she somehow figured out how to get all these articles, I thought was very, very touching. I mean, she has things that I didn't even remember existed.
Yeah. We don't have too much more time because it's a quick Q&A, but I wanted to ask all of you, obviously the world is a very different place than it was even in January of this year, and talk about kind of movements and advocacy and things we can do in times of COVID. We touched on a little bit, but if all of you kind of have thoughts on right now, especially with this election coming up, things we could be doing, should be doing.
Well, the fact that we're sitting here talking to each other on this platform is unbelievable. And I've been just amazed by how people have adapted. People really have adapted to this incredible time we're living through and have learned to reach out and make connections in such a wonderful way. I've been texting my fingers off and writing letters to voters. And, I think every era invents its own organizing strategies and tactics, and that's what happens. We should just have to keep going.
Yeah.
I would say people have to get together before and after the election, whatever turns out, in the largest numbers we can figure. And people should I loved what you said, Ellen, about the simple lessons. Look, what we're facing is unfair. The boss is bad, and we need to band together. Hey, there's no litmus test. You have to be a feminist. You have to look a certain way. You have to be of a certain background. There's no litmus test of language or sort of a whole complicated sense of history that we all have to agree on. We need to get in the streets. We need to be in workplaces. We need to be in schools and colleges, and we need to find what we agree on, what we can all agree on, that we can move forward to make change. I don't know but that's what you guys did, right?
Yeah.
It is.
We can't give up. We just have to keep forging forward. We can't give up.
Yeah. Well,
that's how we win.
On that note, I want to thank you all so much for coming and doing this Q&A with us. I really, really appreciate it. It's been lovely having you here and sharing the film as well.
Thanks,
Thank you for
Philadelphia
having us.
and New Jersey. Exit 7 represented.